So anyway, let me tell you a little bit about what SRB Business Solution is. And my name is Sean Brannigan, and I'm CEO of SRB Business Solutions. And basically what I do is help companies save money, about $854.5 million in my career. A couple different ways, which we'll get into. So if you want to save money, I don't care what size business you have, could be 7 people up to thousands of people, by all means give me a call and we'll see what I can do for you. Now, how have we done this? What's the economics that have been going on? My business has been around since January 1 of 2012. And I do things basically 2 ways, through training and consulting. And right now, I don't know how many folks know, but let's say the economy in Cumberland County, plus or minus job growth, 2013, and these numbers come from the Chamber of Commerce. How many jobs do you think we grew or lost in 2013 total in Cumberland County? Any guesses? Well, we've only grown 31 in 2013. That's the total number of jobs that we grew overall. And in 2014, as you probably know from cutbacks possibly with the 440th Air Wing, and also there was 400 jobs lost out for the post office. We could lose another 1,500 there. I don't have the final numbers, but all of those companies could get value from somebody like me. For example, 440th Air Wing, James Scanlon is the Brigadier General. He and I have talked about doing things like brown paper mapping, which we're going to get to right now. I'm going to show you and tell you about that one. And basically what that is everybody has money, and you have processes in your business. So all that is would flow out some of those processes. So if you were to close your eyes and think about 3 boxes. One box is what they call your supplier, who supplies you with product. So that supplier comes, then they draw an arrow, which is the incoming inputs from the supplier that they're sending you. Then the middle box would be you, the manufacturer, and you would have your time in that lower box as to how many days it takes you, and this is very simplified, but it gives you the 50,000-foot view. This is what they call value stream map. So you'd know how much time it takes your supplier to not only get those supplies, send it to you, for you to get it prepped together and get your product produced, and then send it to your customer, the output to the customer. They also call that CPOC. Now that's a nice map to have, but what value is it to you? It doesn't tell you, it doesn't break down where your biggest process is and your money's at. Brown paper mapping does that. So you get a current state map. So you would take one process, could be accounts payable, accounts receivable. It could be, if you're Federal Express, how do you do logistics? And you map out that process, and you see not only the process steps, but where the waste is by doing that, how many signatures there are. And I actually use brown paper to do that. And you map it out, you take that picture, that's your current state. Then what I do is I teach people how to do a future state. Do you really need that many signatures? Should it take that much time? And you can save 40% or more of your process. Plus, now your people know how to do this. So think about it. They can keep refining that process over and over again. Because if you aren't doing that and your competition is, guess who's going to be feeling the problems in a couple of years? First year, you lose some market share. Second year, you'll have to decide on laying off some employees. And the third year, you might be out of business. So brown paper mapping, only 24 hours to train you in. And we can map up to 3 processes. Even at NC State, maybe they do 1, but if it's a mixed audience and it's not focused on the subject matter experts of each one of those processes, you're not going to succeed. So those are some of the things that you can do as a business. And I've done many, many times. Now, team building, everybody thinks we're going to hold hands, kumbaya. No. Team building that I do, and I've designed and developed and done with over 30,000 people, and never failed to save less than 40% of the cost of doing business. Think about that. In 2008, the economics, right, we had the meltdown. 20 to 30% of most businesses were down at 20 to 30%. If they had real team building in place, they would have been up 10 to 20%. We've been ahead of the game, gaining market share. What that is I measure 6 different areas. I've never failed to save less than 40%. Let me give you an example. I did some team building at a manufacturing plant here in town, and the biggest complaint that they had in the manufacturing area, because I asked them, I said, what's your biggest problem? What would you like to see improve? They said, well, we work here, we make 1.1 billion stampings a year. We're here 7 days a week, 365 days a year. We want to see our kids grow up, we want to see our grandkids. I said, if you follow the model I'm going to lay out for you, here's what's going to happen. In 3 months, instead of working 7 days a week, you'll be working 6 days a week. In 4 months, instead of working 6 days a week, you'll be working 5. And you'll say, hey, Sean, when are we going to work overtime? Because I got used to that overtime paycheck. They thought I was crazy. That's exactly what happened. And in the 84-year history of the company that owned us then, nobody had created a world-class team in less than 14 months. I did it 9 months with them, and we had 42% improvement in productivity. And one of the things we did was I took their changeover time from 6 hours down to just 30 minutes. In 10 years since then, they only took 10 minutes more off of that changeover time. And I never taught them quick changeover. So that's the beauty of this. When you have teams, when people really work together, and you see there in that same company I worked at, just 1 hour a week, we had 84 employee involvement teams. We had 1,369 employees. They made over 13,000 suggestions. We implemented 88 to 90% of them and saved over $2 million a year. And we competed out to 7 decimal places. And we could make a filter higher quality than anybody could in China, India, in Mexico, or in Korea. That's the power of doing these things right, rather than a lot of companies try to get lean in. American culture is not team-based, contrary to what they say. You go to Japan, best thing that can happen at a baseball game is a tie, because nobody loses face. That's the difference. So you have to teach them this first, then you can do the lean skills and some of the other things. Another real important skill, I work with another client here in town, and you see this in a lot of companies, and maybe this is typical of your company. They have great problem solvers at the supervisory and management level, but they don't teach their employees problem solving. And what happens then, what you see in the organization is a lot of firefighting. And they're great at firefighting because the same supervisors and managers, this is what they're asked to do, so they are great. And they solve all that stuff, but then it bubbles back up again. In 6 months or a year, they're fighting the same problem, and it just never goes away. So by utilizing the problem-solving training that I teach, which would be a mixture of fishbone diagrams, which was, or you might have heard Ishikawa diagrams that were taught by a guy in Japan in 1942 named Ishikawa, and he taught it in the Japanese steel mill. And that fishbone is root cause analysis. It's been around since then. Very, very effective tool, and gives everybody in your organization, because the people who do the work, the closest to the process, they know more about it than anybody else. So involve them and get them involved, and it's a great way to do things. The Pareto charts are named after a guy, an Italian quality engineer, Wilfredo Pareto, and that's your top 5 issues will be 80% of your problems. So we use that tool as well, and then something called the RACI tool, which is basically a project management tool. So you combine those 3 processes and tools with 2 specific business problems, and what winds up happening is you get a 30, 60, 90-day plan, so within 3 months, we've either eliminated or greatly reduced your problems. And that's the other thing that we sprinkle in also with the teams and things. So you can do this, and this is just a 4-hour course. Imagine in 4 hours being able to solve 2 of your major business problems. Now this is a newsletter that I send out to clients and folks, and this particular newsletter deals with structured panel interview training. One of the other companies I worked at, one of the things that I had to do, or was tasked to do, was to hire all the skilled trades folks, because I also have an HR background besides continuous improvement and quality and design some quality systems for different companies as well. And it was taking 6 weeks and costing $250,000 in turnover costs to get all the skilled trades, the electricians, tool and die makers, and also mechanics in the facility. And what I did was, by using structured panel interview, and I trained this and some other tools, I was able to take it down from 6 weeks down to just 4 days and 0 cost of turnover. So $250,000 down to 0. These are the kinds of things that you can do. Now, why is that important? A lot of baby boomers are leaving the building. Just in 2013 alone, you had 1.5 million baby boomers retiring. A lot of companies had to replace, in this area, 25 to 50% of the workforce. How do you do that and still keep that intellectual capital in your company? And whether you're a small startup, you feel that even more when people leave. And you've got to get good people. How do you do that? Well, you create assessment tools. You do other things like that, whether they were hands-on, which I did, and also written. You assess the skills you had. You also have to check your job descriptions. Are they 8 to 10 years old? Well, maybe what you're doing now and skill sets you need isn't what you needed then. So you could be making a big mistake right from the get-go by hiring off of basically false information that you're not using anymore. So these are the kinds of things that you can do and the kinds of things that I can do for you and my company can do. Now, why should you add us to your bottom line? Basically, I've got over 20 years experience doing this. I mentioned the money, $854.5 million. But I also have technical experience in lean in a lot of areas. And the way I learned it was practical application. In other words, I went and was trained by a company that would take 4 teams, and we would go into a facility we knew nothing about. It could be a union facility, non-union, and in the products that we knew nothing about either. And we had 4 teams, and each team had to save $100,000 in 1 week's time. Never failed to save less than $100,000. In one team up in Asheville, North Carolina, we actually saved $1.1 million on the one team that I was in. And therefore, you go back and then learn how to do it. You work with the people that are there. You take their skills, you teach them these kinds of things that I've talked about, and you can do it. And whether it's an office place or out on the floor, it doesn't make a difference. It doesn't make a difference what business you're doing. So that's the good thing. Some of the clients you see there that I work with is Eaton and Unilever, the city of Fayetteville, Fort Bragg, some of the government service employees, et cetera, out there. And I also have subject matter experts and friends that I can contact. So I've done some GD&T, which is a fancy word for geometric dimensioning and tolerancing. But if you want somebody who's really done, maybe instead of a couple hundred of them, several thousands of them, I've got some people who do that as well, so I can hook companies up with that. I also used to, I built 180 airplanes, so if you need some airplane A&P stuff, airframe and power plant license stuff, or any kind of stuff, basically at all, I can get it for you. The other key thing is, although 80% of the businesses who tried lean and tried to put it into their companies have failed, I've always succeeded 100%, no matter where I've been. So that's also a good thing. And I've also created world-class and best-in-class teams, developed my own 20 keys, which is a process that I could get into if you got any questions. So you might all be wondering out there, what do I need from you guys? Here's a couple of things that I need from you guys. One would be any business contacts that you have, folks that you might know of that would be interested in using these types of services would definitely be good. I'd also have a website. I also have Facebook, but guess what? My website really hasn't generated business for me. What generates business is either, I work with a lot of community colleges. I also word of mouth stuff, obviously. But I'd like to have, because that's a big chunk of what I have to pay every year, like a lot of you, if you have your own business. I'd like to see that generate some things. I've got some ideas by being here, and if you have any input on that area, it would be helpful as well. And then also, I'm thinking about how do I use maybe webinars or some other things, hook that up with my website to do that as well. So any ideas you have for increasing my help, because my job and my whole company, the reason I founded it is because I want to add more jobs to this area. I want to make Cumberland County the center of job creation because it's better for our community. I don't want to see the loss of jobs, and it doesn't make sense to. We have the talent. We just have to do things a little bit differently than we've always done them, and we can make that happen. So I thank you very much for coming and listening to me, and if you have any questions, by all means, please ask away. Yes?
You were talking about looking for other businesses. Are you a member with the Chamber of Commerce?
Yes. I've been a member of the Chamber.
Do you attend their business after hours? Or
Yes, I do the after hours and also their.
What about the grand, where they have ribbon cutting, where you get a chance to meet the business owner?
I go to those as well.
Well, I found that to be a good source of networking, business to business.
Mm-hmm. And they can be. There's opportunities to get I get a lot of nibbles there, but the bites I've gotten is more from the community college side. Because, I don't know if you know this, but in North Carolina, all 100 counties get money from the federal government to, keep business in there. So if you're a manufacturer or distribution company, you can get money. So they would call in subject matter experts like me to help companies like that. For example, at the end of the month, I've got to go to a company in Rockingham and kick off their TBM, which is their preventative maintenance program for that. So, those types of things. I've done a lot of work with Fayetteville Technical Community College too, and Robbie Johnson, and also T.J. Haney, who do that here, and also Sandhills Community College, and a couple others.
Would your company be any service to a business business, like say for instance, I look for individuals to put them on 1099 to become investment, consultants and everything, invest the money. So if I'm looking for people, qualified people to be, people that have been, because there's a lot of people that downsize in the financial services industry, and we're looking for people to become investment consultants, but they're 1099, they're not W-2 employees, they're contractors, independent contractors with them. So would the services you're talking about be of any good to a business like mine or anybody else?
Yeah, if you're looking to identify the right talent to be successful, which I think is what you're looking for in that business, yeah, I can sit down with you and put together some of that. And I'd like to start obviously with a job description and get that information kind of from you. What are you looking for? What are the key skills and abilities that you want to focus on? And then we start from there and go from there and put some things together. Okay. Any other questions? No other questions? Come on.
With regards to your website not generating any potential income or anything like that, have you thought about using any local graphic design companies or freelance workers that actually build websites? Because they should be able to program it so that you're like #1 on solutions when your name gets Googled and all that stuff, or if somebody's Googling a solutions company or looking for ways to lean their company out, put you at the top of the list for Cumberland County, and that way you can also, everybody else that they build websites for, that's just another way for you to network and get introduced into their...
And I've looked at BizTools. BizTools was here, as a matter of fact, one of the presenters, and also, because I've got a web guy that put my stuff together. He's Florida-based. So I've looked at some of that, and I'm considering BizTools, but I think there are some other tools that you might need to try to get some of that interest, and I'll see. I'm interested and I'm open to anything in the social networking arena as well, because I've got a Facebook for my business, but I really don't do much with it, to tell you the truth, other than it's linked there, and that's not an area of expertise for me. I'll be quite honest. I can go into a company, I can do a tour in an hour, I can tell you everything, that needs to be fixed and done, but you get me on the website, and I'm just like, hello. And all I want to do is, I've had my phone on. You see, if I could save you 40%, like I've said here, and then throughout the history of over 20 years of doing this stuff, my phone should be ringing off the hook. Cha-ching, cha-ching. And it's not happening. So that's what should be happening here, especially with all the economic stuff.
Well, our web designers out of California, and they regularly host, webinars and all that stuff. So it was just a thought, if they could do it, and they're putting together websites, and they're also following up with the different businesses that they start up and giving them ways to, streamline their processes and use their social media presence and all that stuff to build their business.
If you have that information, I'd be glad to share it. Because my hang up with a lot of those guys that they talk about hits you're going to get on your website, but I say, I don't care about the hits. I care about money.
It's
Yes.
bottom line. It seems to along that line with the website, just sort of the casual, getting those nibbles you were talking about. You could tell them, as you're, making an initial contact, getting a nibble, passing out a business card, saying, please go to my website. But one of the things that might be pretty useful on the website is to, some of those you were talking about, the successes you had, really folks should be really open to that. Getting a few testimonials from clients, whether, brief little written piece, or maybe you've got some video or something talking about how the process worked and how they, not giving away trade secrets, but how they found it beneficial. That might be a nice tool to sort of take those nibbles and maybe make them into a catch.
And that's a good suggestion. It really is. Yes.
I know of a person, Candy Sugarman. That's what she does. She's Social Candy.
Okay.
I'll give you her information. But anyway, she's here locally, and that's all she does. She does like your business, the same kind of thing, but it's all for social media and websites.
Okay. I appreciate
Testify to
it.
her. She's
Yeah,
awesome.
she is. She's
Okay.
wonderful.
2 recommendations. Great. Yes.
Have you tried LinkedIn?
Yeah, I'm on LinkedIn, and I've got substantial stuff out there, and I've got contacts and things of that nature. See, some of the things you have to overcome is two things. One is, they look at my site and they just think it's lean, and either some of the companies that have tried it, hey, we tried that, been there, done that, but they weren't successful. And then other companies that maybe think, hey, you know, we can do that ourselves, but if they could, the problems would be fixed. I mean, I've got one client in town, and I won't say who it is, but they've had the same problem since 1993. And it hasn't gone away. And I'm like, and the reason they're happy at this point is because they're tied for leading market share in their industry. And I said, but here's the problem. If they get somebody in there like me that's identified, and I show you how to fix this, in a year, again, you're gonna start to lose market share. And those things are gonna start to happen. And recently, this past year, as a matter of fact, they've had some of those things happen. So I'm hoping that it'll change them a little bit. And because sometimes companies get that way, they get so set in their ways they don't want to change until they get in a major issue, and then they want to change. But sometimes, and we do that as Americans and as people, we do sometimes too late. Sometimes you can't, you know, you have to do this earlier. You can't start so late that you can fix the problem, because sometimes they dig a hole too deep. I can't get them out.
Can you offer any freebies, excuse me, just to get your foot in the door?
Yeah, I mean, well, one of the things I do, and one of the reasons why, for example, I hook up with the community colleges, I just offer the training. But I also, whenever I do the training, it's always return on investment. So they have a 30, 60, 90, so then I can get in and step in, take off my community college hat, put on my business hat, and now I'll do the consulting. And I can do some of those things. For example, I'm waiting for one company here in town. They want to do this, they want to do the brown paper mapping, as a matter of fact, because they know they need it, but they had a change in the CEO. So I'm waiting for them to select the CEO, because even though I worked with somebody on the staff level, he told me that until they pick this new person, you know, then they can get the green light and we can do this. So those are the things. And I've tried to come up with some ideas too by working with the community colleges to do some different things, so I can lock in more of my business rather than waiting here for some of these clients to really come through and do something. So, yes.
So while obviously you consider the community colleges to be a natural working partnership for you, what other type of businesses would you consider that?
Basically any business, it could be nonprofit.
No, but one that you can feed from, like you do the community colleges.
Well,
Because you scratch their back, they're scratching yours,
Right.
your business.
Right.
Who else would you consider a natural business?
anybody basically out there. I mean, it doesn't, you know, because if they want to try it, they can do something like a 4-hour problem solve. Give me 2 business problems. You talk about it, and it's not, I don't charge a lot of money. I know consultants that charge crazy dollars, you know, $20,000 a day, and then they take a percentage if you get over a certain amount. I don't do that kind of stuff, because I want your business to succeed.
So have you done
for
things
small
from the
business.
Chamber of Commerce like you're doing with the community college?
One of the clients that I just mentioned to you before, that's how I connected with him, was at the chamber, and I've got a nonprofit that wants to do something at the end of this fourth quarter. I've got like 5 companies in the hopper that they're going to do some training with me. It's just a matter of when. Some of them have already set the dates, and then I've got 4 or 5 that have talked about doing consulting.
Right.
Yeah, they haven't established dates and that kind of stuff. So because obviously you make more money from the consulting that you do, and it's a steady paycheck then,
Right, absolutely.
as opposed to just doing the training.
So on your team building exercises, have you reached out to any other companies in the area that do team building in a different environment, like Hope Through Horses? She takes people out to the field with the animals. Have you thought about doing maybe a partnership and so that you get people out of the boardroom and into the, maybe you could do something, Heather Wilkerson, maybe you should contact her and see if you can.
Okay, and that's a thought. I mean, I do, the things I do, for example, when I measured 6 different areas, one of them is how well your work group gets along.
Right.
Another one is how well you get along with other key work groups. So let's say if you're manufacturing, you got to deal with engineering, and that's usually a loggerhead deal. I develop things to do that, but I also develop things like how do you make decisions in your work group, which is real important. So all of those things to basically, so you don't have the conflict.
Yep.
When you don't have the conflict, you can jump to a better stage of performance, and you can do other things, besides giving them the problem-solving tools and other things that you sprinkle in. So it's a lot more effective to do it that way, and that's where I think companies should go. The foundation should be in that. I've also got a copyright on a process that I've got. I'm going to probably publish one of these days, and if I get a client that I trust, I would share that with them. But with intellectual capital stuff, it's hard to do.
Yeah, it is.
You know, it makes makes it more of a challenge.
We'll take one last question from the audience.
Well, again, I thank everybody for coming down and listening, and if you know anybody or can give me some help, I appreciate it. Thanks you very much.